What is going on, Bro US History students? This is Mr. Bro, and welcome to another Bro History Regents Review video. This one's going to be on the topics of common sense, the Declaration of Independence, and the American Revolution. So this video is basically going to cover everything that you need to know in order to be successful about these three topics on your Regents exam come June. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so the first topic we're going to tackle together is common sense. So what was common sense? All right, so common sense was a pamphlet that was published in 1776 by Thomas Paine, my boy T. Paine. All right, so T. Paine was a member of the Patriot cause. So he wants to declare independence from Great Britain. He often criticizes the leadership of King George III within this pamphlet. All right, so he doesn't like how the colonists have been treated prior to this time, right? If we talk about this earlier in the year, right? The colonists had been taxed unfairly on common goods like paper, tea, etc. All right, so they had really had enough of King George III. So he kind of publishes this pamphlet to kind of inform the people, hey, why would we want to be controlled by a king anymore? Why don't we start our own government? All right, so this pamphlet was very popular throughout the colonies. It sold over 100,000 copies, which is a staggering number if you think about it. All right, it was written in everyday common language, so everyone could enjoy and read it, and it wasn't too long of a read either, so it was short and sweet and got to the point. It called for Americans to declare their independence from Great Britain. That's what he's saying is common sense. Why would we be controlled by a king? All right, we need to start our own government, not be controlled by this king anymore. So that is common sense. So we need to know the impact of common sense. So it really influenced a lot of people to join the Patriot cause. All right, the Declaration of Independence, arguably the most famous document in our country's history. All right, so what was the purpose of the Declaration of Independence? Basically, it was to announce that the 13 North American British colonies were now independent. They were going to separate from Great Britain. They were sick and tired of being controlled by a king. They were formally breaking away from them with the Declaration of Independence. All right, the primary author of the Declaration of Independence is Thomas Jefferson. All right, he doesn't do this alone, but he gets the majority of the credit. The other two gentlemen that helped him write the Declaration of Independence were Benjamin Franklin and John Adams, so two very famous Americans, obviously. The Declaration of Independence was approved by the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776, so that is why Independence Day is on July 4th, all right, because this is the day we formally declare our independence from Great Britain. There's really three main parts that we need to know within the Declaration of Independence. One is the theory of government, right? So why are we going to separate from Great Britain? What's our new government going to look like? The second part is arguably the most famous. These are all the grievances that the colonists had against King George III. So it's basically like a list of, hey, King George III, here's what you did to us. You taxed our tea. You taxed our paper. You taxed our glass. All right, things like the Boston Massacre had occurred. All right, we've had enough with you. All right, so these are basically outlining all the ways in which King George III had mistreated the colonists. And then finally, right, kind of the last summarizing piece of the Declaration of Independence, it's the formal Declaration of Independence. So you guys did a nice job in class kind of identifying as the Declaration of Independence is like a giant breakup letter, right? So you send a text or you send a letter to your significant other basically telling them, you know, here's why we're breaking up with you. You mistreated me, your breath stinks or something like that. And so now we're formally through. I'm breaking up with you. So basically the colonists are breaking up with King George III and Great Britain. All right, so we're going to continue talking about the Declaration of Independence. So what did it do? It provided an explanation and justification for why the colonists wanted independence. They wanted to be heard, right? We talked about the famous cry of the colonists, no taxation without representation. Many of these colonists feel like they weren't being represented in the government, which they truly weren't, because some guy that was across the Atlantic Ocean was telling them how they should run their lives. So they want to create their own government where everyone's voices are heard. It's important to know, everyone, that not all Americans supported independence. All right, so we have two really main groups that emerged in America during this time. One being the Patriots. These are people that are pro-independence. They want to separate from Great Britain. And then you have people that we call the Loyalists that are very loyal to the British Crown. So we kind of see a division within our country during this time. All right, what are the ideas about government? All right, so there is a movement going on in Europe just prior to the Declaration of Independence being written. It's called the Enlightenment movement. This is happening. And basically, the Enlightenment movement is just kind of a new way about thinking about government. All right, so you want to star and highlight this. All right, the Enlightenment philosophers really influenced Thomas Jefferson. The biggest impact is John Locke. All right, so I want you to star and highlight John Locke in your notes. He has this theory about natural rights. These are rights that can never be taken away from you. So these are things like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, arguably the three most famous words that are found in the Declaration of Independence. So whenever you're on a Regents exam and you see the word John Locke and Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence, that's all usually the choice that you're going to choose within that answer. All right, so that's a little Regents tip there for you. So what was the impact of the American Revolution? All right, so it had an impact on a variety of different people, right? Women, for example. All right, so women provided support to the revolutionary cause. We see they do not actually fight because they are still considered second-class citizens, and they still will not receive rights under the new American government, which will be created after the Revolutionary War. So we're still going to see them being treated as second-class citizens. Native Americans, we've talked about them since the very beginning of class. They've kind of always been pushed aside by these European and now American settlers. So tribes supported both the Americans and the British, so we kind of see a split division within the Native American culture there. And they will continue to face challenges as Americans move more westward. All right, we're going to talk about that when we get to Manifest Destiny later on in the year. All right, so African Americans, how were they impacted? All right, African Americans, they fought in the Revolutionary War, which was something that you may not think was possible, right? Because many African Americans were slaves during this time, but we do see African Americans fighting in this war. We're going to see during the American Revolution, groups are going to speak out against slavery in the new country. We're going to see a new movement called the abolition movement start to take place, which wants to abolish the system of slavery. We're going to see many northern states begin to outlaw slavery after the Revolutionary War, specifically in the North, because there's not going to really be a need for slave labor within the North. All right. And what's the economy like? Individual states control their own economies, right? So we're going to see, depending on where you lived and your geography around you, was really going to impact how you were supposed to make your money. All right, so here's some Regents questions that you could possibly see on the Declaration of Independence, common sense, the Revolutionary War. So if we look at that first question there, the pamphlet Common Sense by Thomas Paine aided the American cause in the Revolutionary War because it persuaded people who were undecided to support independence, right? He wanted to convince more and more people to become those patriots. The second question, a major purpose of the Declaration of Independence was to, choice B, state grievances against British rule. Colonists were sick and tired of being controlled by the British government. They wanted to start their own. That third question, in writing the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson was most influenced by John Locke's idea of natural rights. Right, so we saw John Locke's name in there. Thomas Jefferson, Declaration. So like I just mentioned in the earlier slides, that's usually going to be the example. All right, and then that last question there, just kind of showing the advantages and disadvantages of both the British and the colonists during the Revolutionary War. So we can see England had many advantages in terms of like population, more industrialization, a larger army, yet the American colonists were able to defeat the British in the Revolutionary War, mostly because they had help from a foreign nation, France. All right, so those are just a few Regents questions that you could possibly see on your exam come June. All right, so a quick recap of the video for today. All right, you got to know what common sense was. So again, it was a popular pamphlet written by Thomas Paine to convince people to join the patriot cause and to separate from Great Britain. Know the Declaration of Independence was written by Thomas Jefferson, influenced by Enlightenment philosophers such as John Locke. Impact of the Revolutionary War on women, still considered second-class citizens. Native Americans will continue to face challenges as we continue to move westward, especially with Manifest Destiny. And then just know that African Americans, what their role was. They fought in the Revolutionary War, and we're going to see this movement to try to abolish slavery starts during this Revolutionary War time period. All right, everyone, I wanted to thank you all for watching and good luck on your exam come June. So feel free to check out the other Breau History Regents Review videos as we go along here. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Bye-bye.